So I'd like to talk about another application of our semantic wiki at NASA. We tried to think about ways of getting all of our users to engage the wiki. As James said earlier, between James, myself, and Scott, the three of us created a large portion of our wiki pages for the group, and then we demonstrated the working model, but we couldn't just say, okay, now everybody else go at it and start editing pages. The initial reaction is, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have time to go work on this. And we had to find a way to introduce people to the wiki, especially those that are not familiar with wiki markup, people that have never gone to Wikipedia and actually edited an article. And so we figured the lowest hanging fruit would be meeting minutes. We take lots of notes at various meetings. We have to split up meetings between the group because there's lots of them going on at the same time. And then everybody takes notes and they email those notes out to the group and they figure, I'm done with it. And hopefully now you have that information, and everybody ends up with all of these archived emails saved away, and they say, well, I sent you that information in an email, don't you have that information? And it's really hard to find that. We all know this. It's a good way to have conversations, but it's a horrible way to archive your information. So we decided to use Semantic Media Wiki to set up a basic template and form for meeting minutes. The concept is pretty straightforward. We just take some basic data about the meeting itself, and then we have sub-objects for each topic within the meeting. So that's the basic structure of our meeting. Here's a picture of the meeting minutes form. We added some nice styling to make it not so intimidating. And we created a help page for those unfamiliar with the wiki. So at the top, you just have the basic information about the meeting itself. If there's any files, like a lot of times there are drawings or various procedures or whatever documents, and so this allows them an easy way to upload those files if they're not familiar with the link on the left menu bar. And then down at the bottom there's a button for them to add a topic, and if they do that, this is what it looks like. So the blank form here on the bottom just shows you we've got the topic title, related articles, I'll get to that in a minute, and then the body of the notes for the topic. Pretty straightforward. We created a way to create a synopsis, which you'll see what that is used for a little bit later. But basically, it takes the first section of the body and cuts that out, and that's under the assumption that you should put out the most concise and most important information at the beginning of your notes, and then get into the details as you go along. We actually started off with a synopsis field and found that a lot of people didn't make use of it, so we just do it for them now. So here's an example of the output. Just a real basic info box. It would link to some documents if they were there, and then you can see that this person, as many, likes to use bulleted lists for their notes. There's not a lot to it, other than adding a little bit of metadata, but at least the minutes are in the wiki. You can link to them instead of having them stored away in some archive PST file on your computer. But are they really searchable? So I did a search for meeting minutes, RET, that's an acronym, we have lots of acronyms at NASA, and retractable equipment tether is one of our pieces of hardware. And I said, let's see if I can find the meeting minutes pertaining to that piece of hardware. And as you can see, I got the main page, I got some development page, I got one hit here, but it's hard to tell if that's really what I want. So sort of helps, but it's not the best. So what we did is we add one simple property, related article, has type page, rather than trying to specify, if it is a lesson plan thing or if it's a hardware thing or what exactly are we trying to say. Let's just say, hey, this pertains to this other thing. Just keep it real simple. So, as I said earlier, that field, related articles, for example, if I was to go to a meeting and we were to discuss how we were using our tethers for an EVA, let's say we were talking about US EVA 26, I put that in the related article field, and that sets a simple property. So here's an example, again talking about RETs, retractable equipment tethers, one of many pieces of hardware that we use. This meeting minutes was an EVA Tools fire call. It's some meeting that James went to, and they discussed retractable equipment tether and some other topics that, well, they discussed RET fraying. That was actually the topic title, but James tagged it as relevant to the retractable equipment tether. Where we make use of this is if you go to the hardware page, the retractable equipment tether page, now every page at the footer has a simple query to pull in all of the meeting references. So every meeting that is tagged with related article, retractable equipment tether, shows up here in a list. Now actually we limit it to 10 and then have a link off to a separate page if you want to go view older meetings. But it just gives the topic title, and it gives the synopsis that we cut off of the body, and then some short metadata about the meeting itself, and then the other related articles. That way, you know, if you're sitting around and you say, you know, I know we talked about this at a meeting something like 2 or 3 months ago, but man, I can't find that information. You just go to the hardware page, scroll to the bottom, and most of the time you're going to find it. So the way that we put this together, we use the header footer extension so that every page has this same footer, and then we use the header tabs extension to allow us to have multiple lists based on what it is you're looking for. So you can see we have meeting references. Manifest is about hardware that is slated to launch or return on a specific mission. EVA references, so if a particular EVA used a piece of hardware. Applicable OCADs, that's about some of the rules that we have to follow so that we're safe. And then IVA, that's about stuff that's done inside the space station. So we have all these different topics, we split them out, but the meeting references is the main one that shows up because we figure that's what most people are going to use. And then you can see it's a pretty straightforward query. It's the topic from meeting object, and related article is the page name. So as I said, we use the same approach as the meeting minutes, the same related article property. It's just a real simple one, but it allows us to list hardware that's going to be launched or returned on various missions. So 53P is a particular progress mission, one of the Russian vehicles that allows us to launch hardware. And likewise, this was just set in a basic semantic template where we list out the hardware, and then we say it's related to this page. So just to kind of go through the rest of the footer, we're using the same principle here, EVA references. We can say that, you know, on a particular EVA, we had a tether that had an issue, and so likewise we can list out, here's a page for a particular EVA. We have some basic information about the EVA, who actually went outside and did it, who in our group was responsible for those operations, and then we say in the form we would have a field for significant tools. So this particular piece of hardware, the retractable equipment tether, had an issue, and so let's flag that, and that way down the road we can easily just go to that hardware page, go to the footer, and find, oh yes, that's right, it was on this Russian EVA 37A. I forgot that's the one it was. So likewise on the rules here, applicable OCADs, those are one of our sets of rules that we have to follow. We have a whole bunch of them. It's kind of hard to keep track of them all, so thankfully we're getting those all in here in the wiki. And they're just listed out by number. So we've been actually importing those into the wiki because it wasn't easy enough to use the existing database. And so likewise we can say this particular rule says that you have to use tethers in a certain manner. And so we went in and tagged all the different types of tethers. In fact, I think we may have just used category tether and it automatically populated that. So for example, here's a page about one particular rule. Over there, the hazard and ops control tells you about the rule, and then here we've tagged it. Here we actually specify applicable hardware, applicable categories, applicable location, but it's the same principle as related article. It's just a very broad, hey, what is this in relation to? Similarly, so here's another example. Applicable hardware, applicable locations. This one applies to a whole bunch of places. And as James said earlier when we were talking about the history of our building our wiki, we have several times used queries to find holes in our products and help us complete our products and make sure we don't miss any of these rules and keep the crew safe. And as you can see, some of these rules apply to so many different places, and a crew member might be going to a specific location and we wouldn't have thought, oh yeah, that rule applies there. And this helps us to find those holes. So here's a fairly ugly interface, but it's a basic query on some of those rules. And as you can see, you can do a multiple selection and say, okay, for this EVA, we're going to go to those locations, we're going to use this hardware, and we're also going to use all of the hardware within this category. Let's see what the rules are so that we don't miss any. Pretty simple, straightforward example of Semantic Media Wiki. It spits out a table. That way we can double check our products and make sure we didn't miss anything. So by putting all those elements down in the footer, we've enabled our newer users that are less wiki savvy to go to any hardware page and find relevant information fairly quickly. And so, based on using just regular links, using queries like the one I just showed you, we can help users find the pages they need to edit or be aware of, but it's still not that strong. That, like I said, the three of us generated most of the content, so the rest of the group is fairly unaware of all the different pages that we've put out there. And so how do we make sure that the right people that are experts on the various pieces of hardware, how do we make sure that they go and verify the information we put there and also modify it in the future when things change? So a few months ago we went to another Wiki Summit, or a Wiki conference in Houston. Brandon Harris and Philippe Baudet came from Wikimedia. They gave a presentation that was kind of enlightening. They explained how in a wiki environment you have a whole bunch of small communities and they can be disjointed. And so even with Semantic Media Wiki, we can link these pages together, but it doesn't necessarily get all of the users to engage and cross out of their small community and go check out other pages that they may not be aware of. So, how do we get everyone to move out of their small community and start contributing on the other areas? So, sorry, this is a little bit blurry here, but this is the approach that we've started using. This is our main page. We started off with just an introduction on the top left saying, hey, we have this wiki, welcome, please contribute. And then we had the meeting minutes kind of listed out in a block. And then we said, hey, maybe we should add a little block about this on the main page. And then, well, what about maybe we should add some information here? And we thought, if we put some of this stuff on the main page, people will see it when they first open the wiki, and that will help them realize, oh, there's this other information out there, and they'll go visit it. But as we did that, it became difficult to keep all the styling, um, ideal with the different size blocks, especially when we changed the content. So I found a JavaScript that helps to style the blocks based on the content size, and wrote an extension to make that compatible with MediaWiki. And so on our main page, depending on what the meeting minutes are, because every day there will be different meeting minutes show up, that block may change size, and these things will move around, but it'll help keep things kind of looking streamlined. So on our main page, the focus, right after the introduction message, is our meeting minutes. We show the name of a meeting, and then each bulleted item is a topic, and then it gives the synopsis. And this way, a user can go to the main page. If they haven't been at work for a day or two, they can go to the main page, scan through the meeting minutes, and say, okay, I don't care about that. Okay, I'm not assigned to that. Oh, here's an item that someone talked about in the meeting, and I'm an expert on that. I should go read this. Click it, go read the meeting minutes. So here's just a zoomed in example of the meeting minutes. Additionally, we started thinking about featured articles. If we have something break on the space station, for example, at one time there was a component called an SSU, Sequential Shunt Unit. It's just one of the many boxes on the space station that handles the different power systems. And at one time we had one that was threatening to fail, and we were getting ready to do an EVA. We said, okay, we better study up on this and get things ready. Well, not everyone knows what this hardware is, so let's make that the featured article, put a little picture of it, put a little description, and link them to that page. And that way, if they haven't heard about that page, they can easily go to it. Likewise, we created a box of a list of current issues, and that way that list can always be updated in the hopes that as the current hot topics at NASA change, our users can go to the main page, and if they see something new, they'll say, oh, I better go check this out. Another block that we incorporated, upcoming events. We use a property with a date type, and so right now it's just geared towards vehicle launches and the dates of an EVA. So it's pretty straightforward, but it helps helps users that may not be up to speed, because these launch dates and these EVA dates, they change daily, sometimes multiple times during a day, and going through your email and trying to figure out, well, when did those dates change, it's too cumbersome. But at least here we can just semantically put that on there. Anytime we see an update, we go update that page, and here it is on the main page. Recent changes and basically the recent changes in the talk namespace. We've got blocks for those as well. We're still trying to educate our users about using discussion pages effectively. Some people use it, but not so much yet. So we're trying to advertise this feature and get people to realize, oh, someone's talking about automated stowage in it, and I'm an expert on that. Maybe I should go answer their question. Additionally, so we told you that our proficiency training, we have to, every couple of years, we have to go through and read all these rules all at one time, and then say, yes, okay, I studied all those rules and they're fresh in my mind. Well, what if instead of once every 2 years, you just read 1 or 2 rules every day? So we're trying that approach out. This isn't the official way that we do it yet, but it's kind of an underhanded way of testing it out and seeing if people, they go to the main page and it loads one of the rules randomly, and if they happen to scroll through and say, oh yeah, I forgot about that rule, and then they might read the history of it, and without knowing it, they re-educated themselves. So the goal here with the main page is to change the morning routine, change the approach of people in our group from going to their email first. Instead, go to the wiki first, check out the meeting minutes, because as a group we've adopted that officially, And then while you're at it, take a look at the featured articles, recent discussion, you know, the talk pages, see what's going on in the wiki, and then go to your email. And we're not going to eliminate all of the email, but at least now we can hopefully track some of this stuff and keep it in the version history of the wiki rather than saving it off in a file somewhere on your local computer. So where are we going with this in the future? Again, the focus is on trying to figure out how to advertise pages that aren't being watched well, pages that have been edited by James or me, but really the expert is, you know, Bob over here, but Bob's never seen the page. How do we do it without manually going and talking to every single person about every single page? So we're exploring different methods for determining which users should be engaged in which conversations and on which article pages. So James actually talked about that earlier with his watch analytics tool. We're hoping to expand on that and see if we can find some ways to get better, a more balanced user engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think this once more showed us that with a rather basic approach, we can have tremendous effort and can really have some changes in how people act and how information is spread inside the company. That's really great. Yeah. Any questions?
Okay. Hi. At what kind of rates do you generate meeting minutes that would be applicable to the wiki?
Right now, 5 to 10 per week. We're hoping for a little bit more, but again, our group is only 50 people. So with a larger group of users, you might have a lot more.
That's what I was thinking. We've got about 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah.
My concern is that if I had scrolling meeting minutes, there'd be so many of them that you'd be able to see all of them, or even track them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We didn't really think about the scalability. This was very much customized to our user set. But you know, like we said, we were trying to figure out how do you determine which users might want to see which pages. So maybe if a user is tagged as an expert of a certain piece of hardware, and then that meeting is tagged as relevant to that hardware or topic or whatever, that might be one first approach, but I'm sure there's a much smarter algorithm.
Thank you.
Other questions?
When you're trying to kind of archive emails inside the system, how do you make sure that there are no double entries for them? Do you have some method of threading things, or do you just copy and paste single pieces of information and put them on the pages?
So we do not actually keep any email files. There are a few pages where we have copied conversations from an email as a reference using the site extension. It gets kind of cluttered depending on how long the conversation is. But the point of this is to not use an email to send the meeting minutes, but instead put the meeting minutes into the wiki, and then if you want to, you can copy and paste the web page into an email and send it out to the group. But I think that that's kind of, hopefully that will go away as people build this morning routine of going to the wiki main page. So that we're hoping the practice is to not copy emails into the wiki directly, rather just input it using the form.
So I'm wondering, where is that picture of you dropping out of the space shuttle riding an SMW logo?
What? I'm not sure I understand. A picture of me doing what?
Yeah, I'm wearing a cowboy hat, dropping out of his.
Oh, right, for the Dr. Strangelove reference. Yeah, I have to work on that.